weeks, because my body's realigning with my hips, my back and everything, because there was a lot of damage. And if you noticed me before, I was really bow-legged. Now I'm really straight. So everything.
Learning how to walk a whole new way.
Yeah, I've had to learn to walk again, yeah. So it's been a painful process, so.
My dad had his done, and I told him you had both of them done, and he said he's crazy. So he only had one done just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
but
they're painful.
Any gratitudes or victories? Miss Brenda.
I just so believe in the power of consistency, because I only work my SOI, and this last couple of weeks have been incredible. I had a close with a seller that I've been working with for 5 years.
Wow.
He just wasn't ready to sell. He sold and bought, and we are selling $450, bought a $350, so that was awesome.
Wow.
It was worth the 5 years of, every 3 months calling him. And it's just been an incredible week. I listed a house from a person that I sold. They bought the house 2-3 years ago, thought they were gonna live there until they died. And things changed, and we listed it, first day on the market, under contract.
Wow.
And yesterday, I had a past buyer that called and said, hey, we want to sell and buy a bigger home. And a friend up in Midway that I've traveled with called and said, hey, come and list my home. I mean, it's just been crazy.
That's
it's
crazy.
like spring cleaning, and I'm working with 5 buyers. We just can't find the right home, but I've written 8 offers for one of them, and I think we're gonna go under contract today.
Nice.
So it's been an incredible, but it's just, people may say, oh, well, you're lucky. It's not luck.
No, it's not luck.
It's just
Preparation.
work and consistency. It's just you have to keep calling, and anyone that wants to call their SOI, it's not an overnight success. You keep calling and calling and calling.
Follow up.
And if you're gonna be around for 5 years, it'll pay off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah, it's been an incredible couple of weeks.
You've been around more than 5 years.
Oh, I have, and I'll be here for 5 more.
Right?
She's just speaking
Or
fast.
more.
You tell
I-
John, you tell us
I'm
that.
just saying, a
You
lot of
tell.
people think they need it. They need it right now.
Yes.
We're an immediate, fast food right now,
Yes.
Amazon tomorrow. It doesn't work like that with real estate.
I love that. It's just what Doris says, right? If you do what you're supposed to do, the work will follow.
That's
The
it.
money follows. This is
I
true.
always, the slogan is submit to the process.
Yeah.
Submit to the process, submit
Yeah.
to the process.
So-
That's always in my mind. This is a process. Okay, I don't like to do this. And when my grandson's, I don't like this. And I'm like, well, you know what? There's parts of my job I don't like too.
Yeah.
And guess what? Suck it up, buttercup. Because
Suck it up.
that's how it works. It's not always fun and games.
It's not. I agree. In fact, I was down in California last Friday with some agents, and it was just fun to see that, like, the consistency of this team specifically since the last time I was there. And it was the very thing that you said, is that they're doing the things that they know they don't like to do. And then obviously I was with them and I was training with them. And the fun thing for me is I am one of actually those crazy ones you guys who actually think prospecting is fun. I really am. Because to me it's an art, and that once you can actually get into somebody's motivation and their needs and their wants, and you're the person who actually gets to help them, that's the fun part to it. So I think just going back to that too, Brenda, it's your intention behind what you're doing, right? Your intention of what you're doing on a daily basis, and making sure that you're staying in that mindset that yes, submitting to the process, but also that something's going to come of it. Your
It is so
intention.
crazy. There are so many horrible real estate agents out there. And I hate to say that,
It's
but
true.
I'm here to help people. And my new mantra is I'm here to help people make good real estate decisions.
Yeah.
And you know what? If it's better for them to keep the house and rent it, I will tell them that. And they so appreciate that. And sometimes it is. Gosh, you're going to walk away with $1,000. Let me teach you how to be a landlord and keep this, and let's do something
Let's
else.
get you
But
into something else.
it's just crazy.
Get creative,
Yeah.
right? Like, we were at a call night last week and hosted one in California, and the agents would just stop once they've got the nose. And I'm like, wait, go one step further. What are you doing to use for investments? What are you doing to take the equity out of your home and do a HELOC loan? This and that. So this is the challenge with a lot of agents, right? They just don't understand the business enough to know and get creative on the phone.
Exactly.
When you do,
That's
you
so
can do
true.
so much more. Matt.
Yeah, my gratitude ties in really well with this. So I had several of my coaching calls yesterday, and I was kind of like in this peak state of enlightenment, And I had this thought, and obvious, but for me it was like a big aha, you know, and I realized it's like the reality is for me, like I'm constantly thinking about my business, like constantly, and just like worried about, you know, hitting my goals and everything. And so I was just had this realization while I was driving for my last coaching, and I was like, if I could just remove the anxiety and stress of being successful and continue to do the activities, then how much better would my life be? And like literally just completely follow what the steps like I am now and remove the anxiety and the stress, because it's gonna come if I continue the activities.
Yeah.
So why do I need to stress about it?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Do you dream about real estate?
Yeah.
I dream about real estate. It's
It's-
the craziest thing.
If you did a time study on how much I think about my business, like people would feel sorry for me, I'm sure. Yeah, I mean they're usually.
That's awesome.
Shed the tear right now, bro.
I love it. You know, that reminds me, Matt, because I know you were on the call. So the ESS coaching call that they have, that just reminds me of a statement, and it's something that I've kind of gone with this week too, is knowing, right, I loved what George was saying as he talked to disciplines and then basically taking action. But my coach, she shared with me a statement, and she said, values is a place where you act from, identity is a place where you be from, right? But also I look at that from a statement of our disciplines and our actions is there's a point of being and there's a point of doing, and we can get in the habit of do, and then again you can actually kill off your business,
Yeah.
right? Because you're doing so much and you're not being at the same time of being in that presence with your clients.
Yeah.
So I love that. Tim, you're gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, yeah, this has been a good week for me. I closed 2 this week, and then I put I lined up a sell by yesterday.
Wow.
Woo!
Yeah.
Business is happening, guys.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, so yesterday, you know, as I was sitting and I was listening to Jason, there were some things that came up to mind with me a bit. And I often will talk to the rapport techniques. It's one of my favorite things. I actually think it's one of the most critical things you need to really master in this business. But the second thing that I often will talk to is the personality styles. And I often will say is if you learn rapport and if you learn personality styles, there is a statistic, you guys, that if you revisit the personality styles every single year and try to master those techniques, that your business will increase 20% immediately, right? Because you're getting refocused on who do I need to be for that client. And you know, through the rapport techniques that we were talking to yesterday, I often think it's interesting how much these actually go together. And if you can use them together, and it took me years through, you know, my coach teaching me not only just trying to learn the personality styles, but then also coming back to the rapport techniques and learning how to kind of mix the two of them to actually work for me, right? So essentially, Tony Robbins will often talk about it in a different version, and I want to kind of go through some of that as well, because I think it's another step in that direction as well. So let's just real quickly, what are the 4 personality styles? I know that you guys know them, but what are they?
Driver.
Not you.
Oh, sorry.
Ah!
Expressive, apparently.
Okay.
Expressive.
Okay.
My bad.
Ego.
Okay.
Analytical. There you go.
I didn't know what I was until I came here.
Okay, and then what's the other one?
Amiable.
Perfect.
Big mouth.
Okay, so why I want to speak to this real quick. Let's give some fundamentals for those of you who haven't learned the personality styles. Let's just give some quick fundamentals. What are the drivers? Give me some characteristics of them.
Takes control.
Control,
Fast.
Results oriented.
fast in everything they do. They're results based. Okay.
They're a scary bear, but they're really just a teddy bear.
Oh.
Yeah. Most of the drivers I know.
I'm gonna say these guys are usually the ego face, right? Or they at least are perceived as the egotistic person, right?
Yeah, they're not usually.
No, in fact, they're usually not. It's just that's just their
Right.
personality. The way they will respond is just direct, right? So that's another one. They're very direct in the way they talk, What are some other things with them? What is their main source of need?
To be heard, to
Mhm.
be in control.
To be right and to be in control,
Yes.
right?
Right.
So they're gonna want those things. Okay, so give me some things on expressives.
Loud.
Loud.
Wanna be the.
Still fast. Fast decision makers.
They're fast in everything. So the two things that they have in common. So write this down, you guys. When talking to personality styles, it's something that I had to learn a hard fast because we often, especially when you're first trying to learn these things, you'll try to determine the person and you'll often be wrong if you eliminate fast, right? So I always will say, decide who they are not first before you decide who they are. Why would you do that?
It's a lot easier.
It is.
Yeah, because you could narrow down two like right off. I mean, you could eliminate two right off the bat.
Right.
Usually.
Yeah, you definitely can, right? And not only that, the second part to that, Matt, is you want to eliminate who they are not first before who they are, because oftentimes we have an underlining. My natural personality, as you can see, is I'm expressive by nature, right? But my underline is a driver. So depending on when you're going to catch me, you might catch me in my drive mode. In fact, most of my coaching clients, it would be funny, when I coached for Mike, they'd all tell me that I was a driver personality style. Well, guess who I had to be, right? So I was in that mode as their coach. So, okay, give me some more things on expressives. They're emotion based.
Life of the party.
I would say life of the party, or they think they are,
Yeah.
right?
Influencer.
Would you say competitive?
Both of these, I would say, are very competitive personality styles, right? Expressives and drivers. I would also say they're kind of the one that has to be center of a stage.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Very talkative.
What's that, John?
Talkative.
Very talkative. Yep. So we can put that here with them, right?
Lindsay, what about like include, they want everybody included technically?
That's true.
Absolutely. Yep.
Usually pretty racist. No, I'm just kidding.
Wow.
Sorry.
Okay, give me some quick things on analytical.
Numbers.
So they're numbers. Where drivers are results based and are going to be numbers focused, your analyticals is numbers based on everything they need to know, right? They need to know how the numbers got there. The analytical just wants to
Slow
know
to
the
draw.
bottom line.
Slow to decide.
Okay.
Calculated.
I'd say, facts and figures,
Facts, figures, and details, I always will say.
details,
Perfect.
yeah.
Monotone, maybe.
Very, in most cases. But you can have an expressive analytical, right? Like Rob Oakey's a perfect example of that,
For sure.
right? So you have to be careful with that. But usually, in most cases, yes, Mike, they're going to be.
Drier sense of humor.
Yep, dry sense of humors. I often refer to this, and I can say this.
Looks at Jason.
But they can be very funny.
It doesn't mean they're not funny.
I can never
Right. They're
tell.
funny in that more.
I can never tell when Jason is serious. Or
I know.
it's like,
Yeah, I love it.
Dry
So,
sense.
okay, give me some things on amiables.
Well,
For those of you who aren't familiar
he
with
said
them.
slow.
Slow.
Oh.
Said slow.
And analyticals are slow in the decision-making process.
Yeah. And so are amiable.
So are Amy.
Mm-hmm. Amiables are slow. Yeah. They're also going to be emotion-based. Right? What are some other things about amiables?
Non-confrontational.
Non-confrontational, and that is key, Brenda, out of what I want to talk to. Okay?
So can I say something for analytical and amiable?
Yes, please.
They're both very risk averse. Both
Yeah.
of those.
Non-risk takers. Yep.
Non-risk, yeah. They're the thinkers.
Ooh.
And then you've got, to your point, Matt, right? You got your driver who will take risk all day long because they know they can fix it immediately. Because that's just their mindset, right? Well, I'll make a decision, course correct if I have to. Like, that's how they are. Expressives are the same way, but theirs are usually going to be based on emotion, right? So sometimes they have a hard time course correcting where the driver won't have that. It'll be a quick fix for him or her, right?
So they
Okay.
think.
What is, yeah.
Oh,
What is
no,
the
wait a minute.
amiable?
Perception.
Give me some more things on the amiable.
I would say the amiables also would like everyone to be involved.
Yeah.
These guys, you guys, I often will say, Mike, to your point, these are the people that are always looking for approval. So especially when I'm working.
Good job.
No, it's the funniest thing, right? They're always looking for approval. Approval from me, approval from you. Like, to lead them through the process, you have to speak in terms of they're doing the right thing, right? So that you can help them move forward. Because if you don't, then one of the challenges is they need approval that they're doing the right things, especially in these big decision-making processes. Okay, so key point to that. And they do. They love to have everybody like them. So one of the things that I often will tell people as I'm working with them, it's so funny to me how as agents have switched gears to texting and emailing, right? I don't know how many of you have dealt with a home agent. I'm dealing with one right now and it drives me batshit crazy. Pardon my French, but it does.
Yeah.
But they are the worst because everything is done through email and text, right? And you can't, and my statement was, I don't know the emotion of your client to be able to sell this to my client. So I need to hear why is it that this is important to your client, right? And it was just more or less, this is what needs to be done. Well, guess what? You text an amiable as a reminder to show up for your appointment. Guess what's likely to happen? It's the fastest way out without you having to confront them.
So being married to an amiable, one thing that I've learned is like, so it says non-competitive, right? But like, that doesn't mean that they don't like to win. Like they could come across as competitive, but it's just not their priority. So like, they're not gonna be competitive over somebody else's emotions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, it really just comes down, might be like little, like almost smoke screens with their personality, but it's not really their major focus or priority.
Yeah, they just don't confront or
100%.
confrontational as much with
Yeah.
their competition
It's like
or winning.
Like an amiable could bring up a statistic, doesn't mean they're analytical,
Of
right?
course.
But it's just not the ultimate thing that's gonna drive the decision.
Yeah.
I often will say, Matt, and I'm a firm believer in this, I think amiables are the most successful real estate agent if they can master versatility. If they can master versatility, because they have a hard time closing and they have a hard time with the confrontation, right? So if they can master their ability to actually be versatile, they're usually the best real estate agent. Why? Because they have a sense of feeling. They have a sense of desire to help people, right? Like that's their main core of who they work from.
Yeah.
And so if they can master versatility, that's usually, honestly, one of the best agents, best salespeople, I believe.
I agree, and it's a big
So-
hurdle for them to get over though.
Yeah.
It's a big hurdle because they do not like confrontation.
So real quickly, I want to go into some things with this. So with confrontation to your conversations. So you have your analytical. You guys, these are guys that when you're speaking, and there's the whole reason why I wanted to coincide this with what Jason brought up yesterday, is if we're speaking in their language and in their terms, it's so much easier to build that rapport so much faster. Right? So if we're speaking to an analytical, I'm going to speak in numbers. I'm going to speak in statistics and things like that because that's what they need me to be for them. Another thing that I will tell you is when you're confronting them, you ask how-based questions. How's this going to impact you and your family? Right? How is this going to impact your retirement and the things that you're wanting, depending on what's important to them. If you're asking them how-based questions, it's often going to help them move forward quicker because it's, again, getting them to calculate faster, right? Okay, so, and then you have your driver. These guys are the ones that I'm going to say what. Like, I'm just going straight for the jugular, essentially. They're my what-based questions when I'm confronting. Okay. Yep. What's important to you? When you guys avoid chit chat with a driver, especially expressives. And if you're a female expressive, you will lose respect quickly with a driver if you don't avoid the chit chat. Okay. So, and then the amiable is your why-based questions. Why would this be important to you and your family? Essentially, share with me, right? That's another one that I often say, share with me. These guys are the ones that I'll use statements like that often with because I want them to feel like they can share with me, right? Because the more I can let them feel like they're sharing with me what's important to them, guess what? That's all emotion-based for these amiables and it gets them to move forward quicker. Yeah.
I love that because when you're let's say if you're talking to a couple and one's a driver and one's amiable and you go through a presentation, the amiable will agree, and then after you leave, they'll say, absolutely not, I'm not working with them. But if you could say, share with me why, they'll actually start to tell you the reasons why they want to do something, and they'll open up more than anyone else.
Yeah, 100%. And the expressives, it's not necessary that you ask them a certain way. Okay, they're the one personality style that you pretty much can confront them with any start of a conversation. But these are the ones, you guys, that I'll often say, to Ruby's point, tell me. Why would I use a statement with an expressive of tell me?
Because I like to talk.
Oh my gosh, let them talk, you guys. It's always interesting to me. People are like, well, how do I level shift them? How do I get them to come back? And how do I this? How do let them talk. If you let an expressive talk long enough,
They sell themselves.
right, they will sell themselves, because they will tell you exactly what you need for you to be able to go back and sell.
That's it.
Okay, I can tell you there's been times where I've cut off an expressive and then I've had to go, like, I've let them go back into it, and had I not cut off that expressive or level shifted them, guess what? They just gave me everything I needed to know for that sell. Matt.
This used to be my most difficult personality style, expressive, and it used to drive me nuts as an analytical. And actually, recently I had somebody who signed a contract. Literally, he was just talking in circles, and then he eventually was like, you know, I'm gonna sign with you. And I was like,
He talked
alright.
himself right
Yeah, he like
into it.
literally talked
He did.
himself into signing the contract. And he was like expressing all these concerns, He was talking and talking.
Great conversation.
And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna sign with you. And I was, so that was
Good
a
chat.
perfect example of what you were
Good
talking.
chat.
I didn't do anything. Just let him talk. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me
Good
what
chat.
I love it.
you know, like.
No, it's so true. It's so true. Mike.
I just had a quick question. Is there a certain personality style that actually interrupts people more than others?
Yeah, expressive.
Aggressive.
All day long.
Definitely.
That's the only way you get something in.
Yeah, the expressive you can interrupt. Drivers you won't have to interrupt, most likely, right? The analyticals, be careful to how you interrupt them. Because if they're delivering what they feel they need to deliver based on their statistics, their facts, and their figures, and you interrupt them, it can be almost disheartening to them. And then the amiable will let you interrupt them, but they hate it. They just aren't going to tell you.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, oh, no, it's okay. Right? That's just their personality, though.
My observations have been too that all these personality types feel like their style is the way to be.
That's it.
And if you go contrary to them, you're going against their grain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What do you think?
I agree.
You gotta match them or
Yeah.
you're out.
It's always interesting for me, for me to hear an agent say, I don't want to use a script. But it's more so because you don't quite understand what a script does for you.
Right.
Right? A script allows you to be who your client needs you to be, because you're able to determine who my client is based on the script. If you're asking certain questions, you guys, right? This is why I want to go through this. So for an example, yesterday when we were talking, Jason, about rapport, and immediately how do I build rapport on a call? Because this is where you have to use it the most, right? Face to face, you can usually read body language. We can read that other 55%. It's going to be a little bit easier. But if I'm, for an example, even with your SOI, in fact, I was coaching somebody this week on that, is your SOI is the perfect people to practice this with, right? And one of the things I said, you've got to start with hello or hi or however they're speaking. So the fun thing about this, let's just kind of give an idea of this. How would an expressive say hello on the phone? I just want you to think about this.
Hi, how you
Tonality,
doing?
right?
Yeah.
Hey, it's Lindsay. How are you? Or they might go, this is Lindsay.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're going to introduce themselves with energy and enthusiasm,
They
and they're.
start by telling you something.
But it's all
right
about
away.
them.
They tell right away, this is.
Yep.
This is great, yeah.
Yeah. It's usually going to be that they're going to introduce themselves because it's all about them, right? Or it's like, to Brenda's point, they're going to come on with high levels of energy, and it's going to be, hey, this is Lindsay, right? They're going to, hey, how are ya? When I'm talking to my friends, these guys can testify to how I answer the phone when they call, right? So it's just for perspective, that's kind of a conversation. So if I pick up the phone with a driver, how does the driver answer?
Hello.
Oh,
Direct.
Right? They might say hello. Hello? But it's going to be with a tone, right? So now if we go back to rapport building, you can hear the tonality of a driver even. Okay, so almost you guys, if you're paying attention to, and this is why I bring up these techniques, if you're paying attention to them, you can quickly pick up who your client is. Okay, so a driver will also introduce themselves, but it's usually going to be direct. Right? This is, and they're going to give them their name. But they're not going to say, hello, this is Lindsay.
I'm constantly, this is Rick.
So,
I think I'm answering as a driver, it just occurred to me.
okay, so how would an analytical
I'm
answer?
misleading
How would an
people.
amiable answer? How would an analytical answer the phone? Hello. Hello. It's going to be soft and timid and hello, right? It's never going to be about them. They're never going to introduce themselves. Okay? It'll be very rare that they introduce themselves. And analytical, how are they going to introduce themselves? Yeah, it's going to be hello or hi, right? They're going to, again, it's in that tonality of how that they speak. The analyticals and amiables are used often soft-spoken, right? Often soft-spoken, and it's not about them. So it's not going to be the loud boisterous that you're going to get from the driver and the analytical. So again, if we go back to our earlier statement, I can eliminate who they are not first, usually off of things like that. Okay, now I don't say just go off of the intro of the conversation, right? Go off of the conversation to our point of everything else of mirror and matching. If I'm mirror and matching, like if I'm speaking to an analytical, and especially in a presentation, I want to mirror and match their language, right? So I'm going to mirror and match numbers, statistics. I'm going to talk to them in their language. Okay, if I'm mirror and matching an amiable, I'm going to use feel, felt, found. And you'll see that I'll go into the slow tonality, or I'm going to slow my speech down a little bit more, right? I'm going to match them there. Okay, yeah, Jason.
Just be careful when you're first calling, because a lot of it determines the attitude they are prior to the call.
Yeah,
So
and that
if-
can be it too.
So for me, if I'm under some stress before somebody calls, I'm gonna answer that differently. I might go back into my normal personality, but I'll
Right.
answer that a little bit differently right at first. So don't put all of your
Right.
twist on it.
No, I'm 100% with you. I wouldn't put it all off of the top, but I'm just saying there are things that you can be paying attention to. And maybe not just necessarily the intro of the conversation, right? But again, if you're paying attention to how they're speaking, you will very quickly figure out who your client is.
Well, like Lindsay says, it's
Yeah.
the first 20 seconds that you're on either phone with them or in person with them that you can kind of sense where they're at.
Yeah.
In their tones. So if you just match them there, they might actually come up to your level if you start to shift later.
100%. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to bring up real quickly with you guys, how many of you have heard about the 6 human needs?
Heard, don't know
Yeah?
exactly what they are.
So a few of us. Okay, so what's the first human need somebody needs?
Certainty.
Certainty, right? Certainty. So you guys, again, this is where I say a lot of the things that go into it, right? Some of my mentors, obviously. One of my biggest mentors is Tony, and I went through the training, and when I went through training, a lot of the things that he would teach through leadership is I was like, oh, this is just a level shift, but he calls it this, or this is this, and he calls it this, right? But then when he got into the 6 human needs, I was like, oh my gosh, this applies to business. Because we have to understand that sometimes I may have an expressive, let's just say for an example, like myself, my natural personality is expressive. I would actually tell you, in most cases, I stay in expressive unless I need a place of certainty. Then I go into my driver mode. Okay? So there's also, to Jason's point, people act based on their needs as well. They're not just acting based on their personality styles. Okay? So certainty is a key thing. But also to Matt's point earlier, to your comment and your gratitude, this is where all death in any relationship, whether it's business, your intimate relationship, things like that, can be caused. Because if we're constantly looking for certainty, this isn't going to happen. Right? That's where all your passions cut off, Tony will often respond to. Okay? What's the second one, obviously, then?
Variety.
Uncertainty or variety? Okay. What's the third human need?
Love and connection.
Love and connection. So real quickly, who would that be out of our 4 personality styles?
Analytical.
You're funny. You're way funny. Your love and connection is going to usually be your amiable or your expressive personality styles. Right? Their core need is to feel loved or to have that connection. Your certainty and your uncertainty are usually going to be your analytical and your drivers. Okay, so what's the fourth human need?
Significance.
Thank you. Significance.
He's on fire.
Okay, so significance. One of the key things that I loved, and I just listened to this in an Audible today, is Tony Robbins talked to Steve Jobs was sitting in the front row of a UPW event, right? And he came to the event and it was sitting there and Tony's like, oh man, he goes, I never get rattled, but having him sit front row rattled me. He was like, what can I teach this guy? Right? And he said by lunch on the first day, he was teaching these 6 human needs, and it was when the market was shifting and the market tanked. And guess what, you guys, we're in a market shift if you haven't seen it, right? And so, and not that it's necessarily tanking, but you're in a shift. And so if you can master these things, and he said, you know what I'm going to do, Tony, is I'm going to go back and I'm going to create certainty. I'm going to call, and he talked to this hotel that he has, and he says, I'm going to build a runway to the actual front door of the hotel. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So where most people were taking money away from their business of putting money in, Steve was putting it in, because he said, then when the market shifts back, guess what? I already have this whole pipeline and they're not going to leave from me, because the value that he's created, right? The certainty that he's created for his clients obviously creates that value and raises the income. So he's like the very thing and if you guys want to, for those of you who want to listen to it, it was a quick listen, but it was a fun one that I listened to. So, and then obviously the 2 that we can speak to, right? And these are, and I think they can even apply when you're working with a client. Because people want to see their growth, and to Brenda's point earlier, right? They want to see the growth of potential opportunities of having a investment property, but also being able to move into something else. So you get creative with this. So obviously, the other 2 human needs that we act from are growth, right? And what's the last one, John? Contribution. Okay. So these are often referred to as your spiritual needs. And these are your human needs, is what he'll.
Does Tony teach this
Yep.
at UPW?
At UPW. He'll go into it in depth. Okay, so when talking, and this was kind of just an aha when I was going through leadership, is not only is it fun to now know the personality styles, and he has it in a different way. It's essentially the same thing because he uses the DISC test. But then you can come here and go, okay, but where's my client acting from? When I have a client that's frustrated with me and they're yelling at me at the top of their lungs, what are they looking for? Usually certainty, right? And I've got to create that certainty for them. Okay, so let's just speak to though the personality styles. I want you to look at these now human needs. What is the driver often? Significance. Significance and certainty. Where does the driver act from is the place for significance, Jason. It's a showboat, right? It's all ego for the driver.
Right.
Significance in most cases. Okay, they've got to have the fancy car, but it's because the image that they're creating, right? Yeah. So I love that, again, back to his statement that he said in this, is he said, remember, people can act from these places, but also act from them in a different way. So where a driver might act from a high level ego, you might have the amiable who's looking for significance in another way, right? They may be doing certain things, not from a place of ego, but again, from significance.
Validation.
So would it be uncertainty or variety and significance for expressive? What would the expressive be?
I would say contribution.
That's our next question. What do you think it is for an expressive?
Well, I think they like variety and I think they like significance.
Connection, love, and variety.
I think your 2 most critical ones for an expressive are these 2.
Okay, so connection.
So like a driver, they act from significance, right? Because they want the center of stage.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different where the driver's doing it from like determination, success, this and that. The expressive's doing it from a place of significance where they're acting from a place of, hey, I want to be the center of stage. I want to be known. I want to be seen, right? Okay, if you really think about it, they all act from these places, but how do they act from them? Yeah. Is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, that's
Okay?
Yeah.
Jason, sorry.
Yeah, what you just said there, I want to make sure we understand is that those 6 needs, every person in there will function in all of those areas. So if you distinguish that I'm an analytical and right now my need is significance, you might need to complement some of the things that I'm saying. You might need to do things to help me feel significant in that moment. But then there's other times as an analytical that I need some certainty.
Yep.
And I need to know what you're gonna do your job, and I need to know that those things. So what you were saying there right at the end, I think is so critical. It's not that one is more than the other, and sometimes it is. Sometimes they'll gravitate to more certainty or more significance on the driver's side, but that doesn't mean that a driver can't crave love and connection.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't mean a driver can't crave, and if you can distinguish what need they need and then be that in their personality type, you're gonna connect with them at a whole nother level.
That's exactly where I wanted to go with it. So the fun thing about this is if you now know your personality styles, you can now come into their needs, right? And if I'm asking my clients the right questions, I can see where they're acting from. So now if I know their personality style, I can maybe use the personality style to even speak to the need of what they're facing at that time, right? Because it's true, Jason. I often look at drivers, and to your point earlier, Matt, they're usually the ones who are driving the most because they have a facade that they're trying to protect, that they don't want that love and connection. So you'll learn this for those of you who is going to UPW.
Mike's
Guys, it's not too late to sign up, and it's next month. And it is literally in California, and Matt has space. So you unleash the power within with Tony Robbins in San Jose, California. So it's a 4-day event. It's $695.
He's going.
Yeah, he's going now. Okay, good, awesome. Okay, any thoughts or questions to this, or any?
I hope we were recording this.
We were.
Okay.
I thought it's been too long since you taught this class, I think.
Awesome, I loved it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to teach it in more depth. I just did a quick overview because I think honestly, you could spend 2 days on each one of them.
This is great, and I always need to be reminded, and I think I roll around all 4 of those all the time. maybe
That's box
daily.
5.
And it is so funny,
Dedicated.
but I didn't mention earlier, and I wasn't here yesterday, Matt did an awesome job on
Yes.
Wednesday, so
Oh, good.
congrats,
Woo.
thank you, it was really good.
Really good, great.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, awesome, you guys,
All
let's close out.
rise
All right.
Aye,
For
aye.
the Honorable Lindsay.
Oh my goodness. Okay, closing affirmations. I succeed because I act on my goals. I'm an optimist. I like talking to new people. I know what's important to me. I remember people's names. I create the plan I follow. I'm passionate about real estate. I know this is my greatest